Hello, welcome to Connect Africa. A representative or actually the general director of Unicef has visited Burkina Faso and she has met the Prime Minister Emmanuel Ouedraogo. Her name is Catherine Russell. She has also given a press briefing. Previously, maybe a couple of weeks ago, UNICEF has sent its special representative, who is a woman, has also met with the Prime Minister. She's an African with a black face, but we have discussed it here. I don't know why the UNICEF is repeatedly sending its representative, now its general director. Burkina Faso is one of those countries who has fulfilled most of the things what UNICEF is doing in terms of, for example, free education for children, has giving a childbirth, making childbirth free, and also education. They are working hard, really, and better than any African country. But why all this pressure? Anyway, let's listen to her press briefing, and also we will bring you the discussion. I will share with you what we did a couple of weeks ago.
Russell. I'm the executive director of UNICEF. I'm very excited to be here on my first trip to Burkina Faso. I just had a really fantastic meeting with the Prime Minister to discuss the important work that UNICEF does in coordination with the government here, particularly around children's issues, malnutrition, education. We're happy to see the government's investment on these issues and very much look forward to continuing to work together on these issues in the future.
Bonjour, je suis Cathy Russell, la directrice générale de l'UNICEF. Je suis très enthousiaste d'être ici au Burkina Faso. Je viens d'avoir une excellente réunion avec le Premier ministre. Nous avons discuté des questions de santé, des questions d'éducation, des questions de nutrition en faveur des enfants et des questions de développement durable.
It's a good question. UNICEF works all around the world on these issues and brings that expertise here. We have a fantastic team here and will continue to do important work on addressing issues around malnutrition for children and nutrition more generally, on education, and really looking for opportunities to make sure that the children of Burkina Faso are educated and healthy from the very beginning and able to participate in school and ultimately in the economy.
En effet, en termes de l'UNICEF, nous travaillons un peu partout à travers le monde. Nous voulons continuer à travailler sur ces questions d'éducation, de nutrition, de santé. Nous avons une excellente équipe ici sur place et nous voulons continuer à investir dans ces différents secteurs.
Well, we're very happy to see the number of schools the government has reopened. I think that's real progress, and we look forward to continuing to support that.
Not only the number of schools that the Burkina Faso government opened, but also the government has made education free.
Our ultimate goal is to get all children into school and to get them into school where they're learning, and as I said, can learn now and participate later in the economy. So we're very grateful to see that commitment on the part of the government and look forward to working together on that going forward.
Nous félicitons le gouvernement du Burkina Faso pour toutes les réouvertures des écoles. Nous voulons continuer à soutenir ces efforts et au final s'assurer que tous les enfants vont à l'école, investir dans les initiatives du point de vue d'éducation.
And I could just add, the Prime Minister made it clear that the government here sees getting children educated and healthy as a good investment, and we share that view and very much want to be supportive of it.
Son Excellence, Monsieur le Premier
You see, even the agenda.
Ministre,
You see, the thing is, even what they're trying to do is they're just adding on what the government said. For example, the Prime Minister said, as they learn also, to have a healthy generation. So she said, oh, okay, we want to support that, also that initiative. I mean, there's nothing new that they're doing. We all know what comes with entailing with NGOs and this kind of, UN agencies, because they want, the thing is that Africa should be vigilant with protracted presence of international humanitarian organizations in Africa. It should be a limited term. They do their work, assess it, and then that's it, leave. Why are you here by creating crisis after crisis and making your life longer here unless you have another agenda? And that's what's happening in Africa. So now, I will try to share, actually, I will share a video with you, what we discussed 2 weeks ago, following the special representative to Burkina Faso of UNICEF, who is an African woman. And yeah, we raised a number of issues, and our discussant or our guest speaker was she was former UN humanitarian, UN international humanitarian head, international humanitarian affairs head, and she has an experience in Africa and other parts of the world. So she gave us all what's happening, behind the scenes. So I'm going to share that with you. This is basically a video that is at Connect Africa.
Dit is wat jij moet weten over.
In humanitarian affairs, but who now dares to speak about what really happens behind the scenes, especially in moments when African nations are rising to reclaim control of their destinies. And that is Sister Choice Ofuma Okoro. So welcome for joining us again, Sister Choice.
It is indeed a pleasure, as always.
All right, then. So let me, all right, without further ado, I'm going to throw the first question. So to start with, we are seeing a wave of African countries like Burkina Faso taking back control of their land, resources, and governance as well. Yet, at the same time, there is a visible surge of international humanitarian support being injected into these same countries like Burkina Faso and others who are following the step of Burkina Faso in the Sahel state. Now, my question is, from your experience at the United Nations, what role do these humanitarian deployments really play in countries that are reclaiming their sovereignty? Are they about aid, really, or control?
I speak from 15 years. I say this because you have to be in the system to understand the way it works and the possibilities and what it can offer. I've served as with the UN, including head of humanitarian offices on behalf of the UN for 15 years. Most of it have been in Africa. I see the possibilities and I see the dangers. I say both. It depends on who is driving, who is behind the wheel. So I see the possibilities. It is a gift to the international community, to the world, that you have a system by the United Nations that can be deployed when countries face sudden onset disasters. But when it becomes a permanent presence, when it is not usually needed, it becomes self-serving. So you have a country that is now being packaged as having a problem every year because the people who are there need to survive, need to rationalize why they are there. And for me, what I've done in the 15 years I've worked with the UN is to look at the countries that really need this assistance and those that don't. And I've noted very clearly, most of the countries in Africa do not. Yes, they have some challenges. It could be, different challenges like everywhere in the world, but you cannot have a system who sits in a country in Africa and announces to the world every year that, oh, Africa is terrible. It's still the same narrative that was used to colonize Africa. the narrative that have been used to abuse Africa's resources. My particular focus in the last about 10 years, when I started getting sensitized to the narrative of aid that dominates Africa, is that the message, the words that are used to say Africa needs aid separates itself from the fact that Africa is being exploited. You mentioned Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a very, very telling moment for the whole of Africa and the world. Burkina Faso has been rated for many years as the poorest in the world, but has the most resource-rich potentials in the world. So how is it possible that you can present a country as needing aid and begging when you might be from another country that is literally living off the resources of that country? So that is the issue with international humanitarian aid. International humanitarian aid must be monitored, watched as in the way it is used in a country, and especially in Africa. Nigeria, I served as the head of the United Nations humanitarian team in Nigeria, 2012 to 2015. I went in there based on a flooding emergency. When I arrived in the country, believe me, Nigeria private sector and public sector came together, led by Aliko Dangote, one of the richest men in Africa, and they met every 2 weeks to make sure the 7 million displaced Nigerians were, the 2 million displaced Nigerians were settled, the 7 million Nigerians affected were taken care of. And believe me, Dangote, Aliko Dangote, led a team who addressed the situation immediately, within 3 months. Today we have a flooding in the country, and a massive flooding, and it's all public.
My work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all.
It's flooding. Nigeria became subservient to an international humanitarian aid narrative that reduced, subsumed, undermined a strong national system that was emerging. So that's why I say we watch. We must be careful of what we allow in. Now we call international, we call it international, internally displaced persons around Africa. We have the same raging across the United States of America. Is it the Skid Row? Is it Chicago? New York, name it. There are hundreds of thousands that are homeless, but we call them the homeless. But in Africa, we call them internally displaced persons. The use of words, the double standard in the use of words, in mentioning and naming crisis, is intentionally used to undermine and undermine the strength and the growth of African countries. But worst of all, it's used to abuse the peoples of the United States who need help. But some of the Western countries are so focused on using aid to undermine the growth of others and the sovereignty, growth, national aspiration of others. But it's changing. we are working very hard to make sure it doesn't continue. It's changing. So international humanitarian assistance, aid through the UN, through NGOs, is very important around the world. And I use the word intentionally, around the world. It was not set up to be used intentionally to undermine and propel and continue to parade and promote the very colonialistic narrative about Africa, because we're standing up. We are standing up. We are making it work, and we're saying no more. Africa was not created to be abused. We came here equally like every other part of the world, and no more will we sit down and accept that narrative through aid or whatever means they want to use to hold African leaders down. And you know the good news of this moment? Before, they could take down the Thomas Sankaras in the 80s. They could use the usual words to demonize African leaders and take them out, true a fellow African. But this time, we are saying no. That's why we have Captain Abraham Toure of Burkina Faso, because enough is enough. This is over. This is enough.
All right, sis. Thank you very much for that. It's really a very good opening, insightful information. So now let's move to the second question. I asked with the sound, I asked our viewers here online if it's clear for them, because sometimes I have to lean on just to make sure that everybody's following us. Now, moving on, what we can do is perhaps when I talk, because I know that we had a bit of technical thing, when I talk, you will have your earphone. Then when you answer, then maybe we take the earphones that you are using. Maybe that will work for us. Now, let me move to the second question. And I want to talk about this so-called strategic appointments and neo-colonial interference, and our inspiration to bring this question is that, look, yesterday we have been talking about here at Connect Africa, so Burkina Faso, again, we are staying there. Despite Western sanctions, it's showing internal stability and growth. But now we see these new international appointments being made, now including yesterday, a new Unicef representative has arrived there, and the Prime Minister, Emmanuel Ouedraogo, has welcomed the team. And at the moment, you know, when actually the local governance seems to be working, you know, we can mention a number of things like the free education, free childbirth, and others. Now, my question to you is that why should African nations be especially vigilant when these development agencies position themselves in places that are proving and they can stand on their own, like Burkina Faso?
Monday.com's AI blocks are a total game changer.
Excuse me if
This is a trend. This is a trend, and I state it very clearly. It's a trend. The face of those who have always been used to undermine the growth of Africa, the growth of African countries, have been the same faces as ours. They look like us. We mentioned Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara in the 80s was killed by an African face because he was speaking the same message that Ibrahim Toure was stating. You know, they spoke the same things, exactly, sovereignty, using the country's resources for themselves. Now, we have to face the fact that some of the head of the international systems that have not worked for Africa have been African faces. Most times they are African women's faces. It's like you tick the box. African, yes. Woman, yes. Black, yes. 3 strikes in one. So you're able to check 3 in 1, and they accept this appointment. Now, talking about the role of international humanitarian presence in countries that are standing up, like Burkina Faso. The challenge there is that these countries, Burkina Faso needs to understand that when international humanitarian systems or presence go into a country, they have to rationalize their presence. You rationalize your presence by looking for the problem. International humanitarian systems do not exist in the West. You don't have them in the United States, Sweden, in Norway, Belgium. You don't have them there. You don't have them there because when we as international humanitarian actors go to a place, we have to rationalize. We are there to look for problems. So what you hear are problems. If 3 people are malnourished, it has to be estimated that is approximately 3 million. We have to, but don't forget the producers, those who produce the fortified biscuits to address malnourished children. It is produced from France. It employs about 100 people in France. International humanitarian presence is only present in the global south and mostly in Africa. The data are not verified. It just basically says, if we find 2, we can estimate it to 2 million. And the danger in it, as you mentioned, is the faces that are doing it now. The faces that stand in front of narrative that continuously to promote a negative presence in Africa in the name of international humanitarian aid are usually African faces. They are Blacks, they're mostly women, and they're Africans. Now, you mentioned our dearest Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. Who was the person put in front under African to start making statements that are not verified? It was an African-American man, black face. That he just spoke without even knowing what he was speaking about, and he spoke around the normal echo. He spoke within the echo chambers. How do you bring an African leader who is helping his people down? Throw what corruption, throw what he was undermining a man. No, Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso is not just the president of Burkina Faso. He is the president, the voice, the image of Africa. We hold that man up. We hold him up as the hope of Africa. He's an amazing person. Just a joy to those of us who've supported him, even just as he started before it became a trend. He is just a joy to behold. It is the future of Africa, and we live in a continent today where we have resources to make sure our leaders, the hope of the continent, will not be killed, will not be brought down by a negative narrative. We will not be brought down by irresponsible demonization of our leaders, the voice of the future. So yes. Watched as in the way it is used in a country, and especially in Africa. In Nigeria, I served as the head of the United Nations humanitarian team in Nigeria, 2012 to 2015. I went in there based on a flooding emergency. When I arrived in the country, believe me, Nigerian private sector and public sector came together, led by Aliko Dangote, one of the richest men in Africa, and they met every 2 weeks to make sure the 7 million displaced Nigerians were, the 2 million displaced Nigerians were settled, the 7 million Nigerians affected were taken care of. Believe me, Aliko Dangote led a team who addressed the situation immediately, within 3 months. Today we have a flooding in the country, and a massive flooding, and it's all public, announcing to the world, okay, there's flooding. Nigeria became subservient to an international humanitarian aid narrative that reduced, subsumed, undermined a strong national system that was emerging. So that's why I say we watch. We must be careful of what we allow in. Now we call international, we call it international, internally displaced persons around Africa. We have the same raging across the United States of America. Is it the Skid Row? Is it Chicago?
Yeah, so that was our guest who has shared with us, behind the scenes what's happening in the UN or the United Nations agencies with their, not assessed presence in the country, or meaning African countries. So we have to be vigilant for this kind of protracted presence of international humanitarian affairs in the country, including UNICEF itself. What are you doing? If Burkina Faso take everything that what UNICEF is doing, so what else are you adding? But hopefully they know what they are doing, and they are, careful with their actions, and to what limit that they are, letting them inside. All those things, I'm sure they are aware. So that was it with related to the UNICEF's General Director visiting Burkina Faso. Thank you again for tuning in. It's a bye-bye for me for now. Ciao.